Hello, good afternoon. My name's Matt. That's me. That's also me. I can be found on Twitter at DuckyMatt, so if you want to ask me questions, you can harass me on there. So, as mentioned there, I co-run an agency back in the UK called Cyberduck. And so I want to talk to you about clients today. Out of interest, who here works with clients? Handful of you, OK. Who here is in-house or client-side then? OK, a few of you. Hopefully, the people who are in-house and client-side, this will be relevant to you as well, because a lot of the stuff is transferable. Out of interest, who feels like this when they get an email from somebody last thing on a Friday saying, I've got some design feedback for you? I almost certainly feel like that. So what I'm really going to be talking about is working with clients better. Like, how can we design our process and put as much effort into that process as we do for designing out for our users? And how can we create great experiences for our clients as well as our users? So how does that relate to UX? All too often, I see designers sort of paint themselves as this poor put-upon person that, the clients are the ones ruining everything for them. They're creating these beautiful creations, but if only the clients could just understand what they're doing, then it would get through and it would be wonderful. And often, the client gets sort of painted as like this pantomime villain of the piece. They swoop down, they have crazy ideas or last-minute design requests, and they ruin our creations. And the result of this is a proliferation of websites like Clients from Hell. Out of interest, who has seen Clients from Hell before? Hands up. OK, a few of you. Out of interest, who's actually submitted a story to Clients from Hell? One person. OK, that was brave. So for the uninitiated, Clients from Hell is basically a website where people can post stories of particularly egregious experiences they've had with their clients. And when I first came across Clients from Hell, I have to admit I found it pretty funny. Some of the stories are quite funny on there. We've all been in this situation, being asked to make the logo bigger. I've been asked to jazz things up before, even though I don't quite know still what jazz things up means. Thankfully, I've never been asked to make the cowboy a little less camp. I'm not sure how I would do that. But I have genuinely been asked before, could I make it so that Time of Your Life by Green Day automatically plays every time a customer received an email from this client? As much as I like Green Day, I think we can all agree that's a pretty bad idea. But the thing here is that it's a monster of our own making. And 99.9% of the time, I'd argue, those stories on there are completely avoidable. And Mike Montero sums this up beautifully, I think. He says, how much of the shit that we complain about all day has our fingerprints all over it? The thing here is I actually love client work. I've been very lucky to work in my time at Cyberduck with some really smart clients on some really enjoyable projects. And it's quite rewarding as well, I think, to work across all different walks of life. So, from aerospace to finance to cancer research, there's all of these industries that if I'd not worked with those clients, I would have known nothing about them. And from a selfish perspective, I find that sort of quite enriching. But I'm not going to lie, it is challenging. It's legitimately hard. And I think there's a good reason for that. And Vitaly touched on it earlier with his talk, which is it involves people. And as Mark Bolton says here, the design process is weird and complicated because it involves people. And the reason why that is people are also weird and complicated. So what I'm really talking about is relationships, and how can we create, by design, productive and successful relationships with our clients. So in my opinion, there are three key ingredients for having a good relationship with anyone, so whether it's a client or your mother. I'm not suggesting you apply these techniques to your mum, but these are empathy, trust, and communication. So empathy is something we often talk about as designers. And when we're talking about empathy, we're talking about our customers or our users, usually. And we're talking about, how can we be more empathic to their needs? But if we just sort of applied that little bit of empathy towards our clients, I think we could go a long way. So if we put the shoe on the other foot and sort of put ourselves in the client's shoes and really sort of understand their perspective, often they've hired you to solve a problem that they can't do alone. Perhaps they've got limited domain knowledge, so they don't know an awful lot about this stuff, which can be a particularly scary situation to be in, because you want to sort of grasp back control. And ultimately, clients want to be guided. The projects that fail are the ones where you haven't guided the client in the right way, and you've not defined the roles of the relationship properly. You've not clearly set out what you are going to do and what you expect the client to do also. And if you don't do that, you end up in this sort of office space style clients from hell situation where the client feels like they need to micromanage you because that's all they understand, is that I understand that I need to grasp back control of this project because I don't understand anything else on it. So to set the tone right on projects in my agency, one of the things we do without fail on every project is we conduct stakeholder interviews. And we do these with a broad cross-section of the business, so from senior executives right through to the people on the shop floor, and it's often the people on the shop floor who provide us the most insight. And the reason why we do this is so that we can gauge alignment and patterns between the different people in the organization regarding what obstacles and concerns they face, what they think success looks like, what are their goals, is there any baggage that's coming with this project. And I particularly find that Paul Boag's point here, that there's a turning point in stakeholder interviews where you're about to get that juicy bit of information, when the person gets up and they close the door and they lower their voice. And you just get that extra bit of insight because they're going to be a bit more candid with you. And you don't get that necessarily from kickoff meetings. And that's why we do interviews before the kickoff meetings, because nothing sort of kills candor quite like having your boss sitting at the table next to you. The other thing that's also really important is setting goals right at the start. So like this Dilbert comic here, you don't want to be in the situation where the goalposts are moving midway through the project without good reason. So one of the things we do at CyberDuck, as well as setting KPIs, like in Selena's talk, we also write a design manifesto. Like, once we've done a bit of research, we're understanding a little bit more about the project, we write a manifesto. And that includes principles of what we're going to do, and we get the client to buy into it, and obviously we buy into it as well. So the second ingredient to good relationships and productive relationships with your clients is trust. And trust is made up of integrity, reliability, transparency, and respect. So if you're honest with your clients and you don't sort of fall into this trap of over-promising and then under-delivering, they'll respect your integrity more, and it gives you more time to actually consider the problems at hand. And then if you give them updates, even if there's nothing to report or there's very little to report, they'll respect your honesty and sort of appreciate being kept in the loop. And I also find being transparent with clients and sort of involving them in the design process actually fosters a lot more trust. And the reason for that is it's a lot easier to explain the rationale and thinking that's gone into a design if the client's gone on that journey with you and they've been part of that process of designing with you. And the ultimate point is surprises suck. So whether it's finding out your father is a Sith Lord or that a design doesn't quite hit the mark, nobody really likes surprises, and especially so clients. So one of the things we do a lot with clients is we run design studios and workshops, and we find them really useful for fostering that atmosphere of collaboration with our clients. And what we also do in those is we try to sort of design in the open as much as possible. So we'll try to sort of camp out in their office to a degree and take over a room and stick stuff up on the wall so that everybody can see what we're doing, and they can come in and ask us and sort of talk to us and get involved in the process. The other thing we do is we try to expose, as much as possible, expose our clients to research directly. And there's a good reason for that. What you tend to find is if clients go along to research and see firsthand somebody struggling with their product or firsthand somebody complaining about their product, it seems to sort of turn on this like empathy switch in their brain, and they're often sort of find that much more powerful and will believe in that a lot more than me telling them as a designer or showing them a video of it. And as Jared Spall points out here, there's a direct correlation between the exposure that the whole team has to research and the improvements that we see in the designs that we produce. The other thing that matters is respect. But what I really mean is mutual respect, because you don't get respect by sort of putting your client up on a pedestal and sort of begging approval of them all the time. But nor do you get respect by sort of talking down to them like they're some kind of idiot who doesn't know anything, because you just get this reputation of being a no person, and that's the sort of person clients don't like working with. So instead, you need to find this sort of perfect balance of working with your client as a peer, as an equal. And the point there is that egos often get in the way of great design. And as Chris Butler here says, your ego is a bad designer, and nothing quite kills trust with a client like scoffing at their ideas. So what we do at Cyberduck is we try to work like a detective, like Sherlock here, and try to uncover even the underlying problem. For example, we could make the logo bigger, I guess. We could make the cowboy less camp. We could make Green Day autoplay. But what is the problem that's actually solving? And by making that sort of subtle shift in how clients think about what they're coming up with and say, OK, get them to focus on the problem, you can then be more positive, because you can often find from that problem, actually, there's a better way to solve it. And it means you can discard then the weaker ideas without necessarily being that no person. The other thing here is that, as Maya Angelou wisely once said, people will forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's particularly true of clients. So at Cyberduck, we do retrospective surveys with our clients. And whether it's stuff that we should improve or stuff that's gone well, like these ones, the stuff that always really resonates is how they feel during the project. So on to the final ingredient of a good relationship, and probably the most critical one, is communication. And it's probably the part where most failed projects fall down. So I'm going to play a clip, and I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it's from a classic British sketch show called the Two Ronnies. And it sort of emphasizes this whole point that it's really easy for miscommunication and misinterpretation to happen. So I'll let it play. Audio? I'll have to act it out. So he's asked for 4 candles, and so the other Ronnie goes back. Oh, there we go.
No, 4 candles.
Well, there you are, 4 candles.
No, 4 candles. Handles for forks.
So hopefully that made sense, but the point there is that how many times when you're working with clients do you say something and the client understands something completely different? And that sort of misinterpretation and miscommunication is really easy to happen. So you need to create a framework that sort of actively tries to avoid that kind of thing happening. And I think email sometimes is at fault here. I think email is a great medium, but I think it's terrible at conveying certain messages. And as Carl Smith says here, when you're struggling to write something sensitive, don't use email, like phone them instead. The other thing is with design, like if you're emailing design to someone and then expecting them to have some kind of objective, rational, and informed response to you, I think you're just sort of crazy. And the other thing is that email is, and sending a JPEG or a PDF by email of a design is a really, really terrible way to explain the intricacies and nuances of designing for this responsive and multi-device world that we live in. The other thing here is that your designs aren't going to sell themselves. It's your job to, when you're presenting your design to clients, is to show them that you've understood the brief and that what you're creating will help answer that brief, will help answer those objectives. The other thing is about framing how you ask questions. So if you ask things like, what do you think? You're not really interested in put it bluntly, you're not really interested in what your clients think. What you're really interested in is, does this design get us closer to that thing that we said earlier on in the project means success? So you need to sort of frame your questions so that you elicit the responses you desire. So rather than what do you think, does this help us solve that problem we identified in our research? And as Mike Montero says again, the client didn't hire you to make something they like, and something they like and the thing that leads to their success probably aren't the same thing, and you need to make that very clear to them. The other thing is to be consistent in your use of language. So one of the things we did at Cyberduck is we created an app called UX Companion, and we use this app internally as a team to ensure that everybody's on the same page when we're talking about certain design theories, certain concepts. Everybody's using the same language. And it also means when we're speaking to clients, we're speaking in a language that the clients can understand without sort of going overly into jargon. The app's available on iOS and Android, and the link's going to be in the slides, so if you're interested in that. So some of the ways we foster better communication at our agency. So we do a lot of sketching and workshops, perhaps not quite as intimate as this, but we find that sketching with clients and doing design studio is really useful because it's got a really low barrier to entry. Literally anybody can sketch. Sketching is cheap and because it's quick. And therefore, because it's quick, you don't get too precious about what you've created. So therefore, you sort of discard weaker ideas and work towards the stronger ideas quicker. Then we get into prototyping. So rather than sort of producing pages and pages of wireframes, we get into actual working code and working prototypes that we can put into the hands of users and actually watch them use it and actually sort of validate some of our assumptions. We also use things like style tiles so that we can explore design language and look and feel without necessarily getting bogged down in the intricacies of comp design. We also use pattern libraries to ensure coherency throughout whatever we're creating. And then we can apply those pattern libraries to our prototypes that we're creating. The obvious one is obviously test. So try and test as frequently as possible and sort of validate or challenge the assumptions that you're making. And essentially just try to remove your ego and your client's ego from the process by speaking to real users of your product. So next time you're working on a project and you encounter this stubborn client or this stubborn issue, ask yourself a few questions. So what could you have done differently? Did you set and manage their expectations? Did you collaborate and involve them as an equal? Did you structure feedback appropriately? Sometimes you'll find you did everything, like in your opinion, right, and it still went south. Things still went wrong on that project. And some people, no matter how hard you try, they're going to want to stick beans up their nose, as Jared Spool says. And basically, just chalk those sort of experiences up as a learning experience. Get better at vetting clients so that next time you work with a client, they're a client that actually values your process and how you work. But more often what you'll find is it's an opportunity to learn and get better and make really great experiences that we, as designers, our clients, and probably most importantly, their users, are going to love. Thank you very much. I have like 1 minute for questions. OK, I was that thorough. Thank you.